welcome back to the Zyori Podcast. Thank you for joining us here on September 27th, 2017, mid-afternoon here, Mountain Time, and we've got a special edition for you. Not much Dota talk today. We're going to be talking about tabletop games, one in particular, what it's like to bring that from concept to actual product, and now really successful product. We've got the lead game designer of Aeon's End here with us, and former Starcraft 2 pro, known online as QXC, but I guess now you probably go more by Kevin Riley than the old handle, huh?
Yeah, there's not too many people I interact with that know me more by QXC than anything else.
So how long's it been since you've been on the pro StarCraft 2 circuit? I haven't really been paying close attention to StarCraft for the last couple of years since I've been in Dota, but how long have you been out of the space?
So basically retired about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And since I retired, I came back like every once in a while. I play in like one qualifier and then just disappear again. And I've done that a few times. But 2 years ago is really when I stopped practicing regularly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard to just pull the plug. I imagine you still play for fun and just keep up with it. But I want to go back a little bit. If I remember properly, were you studying and playing full-time at one point? Did you end up finishing a degree, or were you one of the guys that was playing StarCraft just full-time, only StarCraft?
Yeah, so StarCraft 2 came out when I was a sophomore in college, and I played I played part-time and went to school part-time. I mean, I did them both full-time. I don't know how I had the time in my life to do two full-time jobs, but that's basically what it felt like. So the last like 2.5 years of school, I was playing StarCraft, and then when I graduated, I started playing full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 4 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
God, it feels like such a long time.
I know. Well, I think back. I mean, the first MLG event I went to was DC 2010, and I didn't really start like actually going to them with the intent of making content beyond just a spectator until 2011, 2012. But even that's 5-6 years ago now, and that was when StarCraft was really the top esport.
Right.
How much of your decision to move away from a pro player had to do with the state of StarCraft and other esports? I mean, did you ever consider another? I guess I'm curious. Were you always intending on switching into tabletop design, or was that part of the changing landscape of esports? Right. I mean, StarCraft has changed a lot over the last 4 years.
Yeah, my life does not have as much forethought or foresight as that question lends it. I actually got into StarCraft 2 for similar reasons that I left it, which was that I was super unhappy with what I was doing with my time and didn't really like my main job activity.
Yeah.
So when I got to college, high school was pretty okay. I was kind of a tryhard, but like around the third and fourth year of high school, I got really tired of it, and I was kind of meh. Why am I doing this? I don't really care about it that much, and I just went to college because that's the thing that I was supposed to do, I guess. And my first semester at college, I was just miserable. I hated being there, and that's when I picked up Brood War. And I was like D+ on Icy Cup, and I just practiced like crazy. And then, fortunately for me, StarCraft 2 came out, switched games, and just kind of, that was the start of it. And the end of it was kind of the same thing. Like, I was playing StarCraft 2, but I wasn't doing well. I was really unhappy with how it was going. And so I just looked for, like, what is a thing that I like doing? Mm-hmm. Basically, me and my girlfriend took a tabletop game that we really liked, and we just did a little bit of design work. We changed the rules. We were like, all right, well, what are things we don't like about this game? How can we make our own version of it? And we did that, and we iterated, and eventually we made our own cards, and eventually we had our own game. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it all started. It was this very incremental, organic process. I never really thought it would get to this point.
Interesting. Well, maybe that's why it feels like such a good game, because it wasn't forced. It wasn't something that, a board of directors said, we need a new game by Christmas. What do you got? It just developed as a natural sort of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? Or what if we took this game and added this mechanic? And I'm admittedly a little bit of a tabletop noob. You know, I mean, I've played Settlers of Catan, I've played Puerto Rico, Dominion,
Hmm.
and we've played Pandemic Legacy. Those are kind of the big four that I understand pretty well. And
Sure.
I've played digital card games a lot, but what seems really, I guess, the big innovative feature about your game is that there isn't shuffling. It's a deck-based game that has a very unique way of handling the randomness of cards and kind of the top deck mechanic, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. So in most games where you have a deck, whether it's a deck construction or a deck builder, most of the randomness comes from every time your deck runs out, you shuffle it, or at the start of the game, you shuffle it, and then the order in which the cards come out is kind of your primary source of RNG.
Yeah.
And in Aeon's End, you never shuffle your deck. The order of it is set at the beginning, and when it runs out, you just flip it over and you keep going. And we found different ways to input randomness into the game to keep it fresh, to keep the variety up, and it pushes buttons in a different and unique way that I think a lot of people appreciate.
Hmm. So, what genre does it fit into? Did you guys sort of invent your own genre in a way?
Not quite. So it's a deck builder. So the mechanics are relatively similar to Dominion,
Hmm.
but it's a cooperative deck builder instead of a competitive one.
Oh,
And
right.
so
Okay.
everybody's working together basically to defeat a giant monster. Some people have likened it to kind of like a video game boss battle type of situation.
Huh.
You've got this big creature and he's got certain rules, and each monster you fight against requires you to have a different strategy and different set of planning. Different tools are better or worse,
Hmm.
and so you're working together with your allies trying to take this thing down before you're all
Gotcha.
rendered
So,
extinct.
is it sort of is it a campaign-based thing where you play it once and then you've beaten the monster and then it's there, or is there some sort of RNG element that adds replayability?
So the what we've got right now, Aeon's End, War Eternal, and the expansions, it's all just a one-off game. So you choose your mages, you choose the tools that you want available, you pick the nemesis you're fighting against. There's a bit of randomness in how the nemesis's deck is set up. So in what order is he going to attack you, and what order are the minions going to come out?
Hmm.
Which minions are actually in his deck? That can be chosen or done randomly. And then, but once you finish the game, there's no continuing storyline. It's not like you play 6 games in a row and
Hmm.
what happens in the first game affects the second game. It's just you go, you play a game, it takes an hour and a half, depending on how many players you have and how experienced you are. And then when you
Right.
finish, you put the box away or you play another game, but they're not connected.
I see. Interesting. I want to pick your brain about Kickstarter a little bit because that's one of the things that as soon as I started googling around, I knew you had done a Kickstarter. I remember seeing you tweet about it right when it first launched, but
Hmm.
I guess I never got the follow up that it was so successful. And the first one you guys raised what, just shy of 200K, I think like 190.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, that's I don't. What was the original target on that?
Maybe 30. 30 was like, if we don't
Wow.
get 30, we can't make the game.
Okay. Wow. So, I guess, what is that experience like? I mean, I admittedly don't have much hands-on experience with Kickstarter. I've never really done one or worked with anybody that has done one on that scale. But when it's that successful, I mean, does that like kind of change the scope of your project? Because you go into it most likely thinking, okay, we have to hit this 30K. If we do that, at least we're getting started. I can't imagine you go into that expecting, you know, a six-figure sum necessarily. Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first Kickstarter was definitely a surprise. Like, uh, it's weird because I never intended to make tabletop design my full-time job, but I never intended for it to not be my full-time job. Like the whole time we designed, or maybe after like the first month or two, we always designed things like, well, let's make it in a way so that we could pitch it. Let's make the mechanic in a way that we could get this published.
Hmm.
And when we were making the game, it's like, well, let's make the best game we possibly could.
Yeah.
Let's make a game that should be able to be super popular. And the Kickstarter happened, and through some combination of events I don't fully understand, it did quite well. But the game was done when the Kickstarter happened.
Okay. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of Kickstarters out there that are, I have this idea, help me figure out my idea. And if you at least have a working prototype that people have tested and played and it's been refined a little, I think that's a much more receptive Kickstarter pitch.
Yeah, I think it helps. So we did a lot of blind play testing. We would send a print and play file out to a number of different people and gather feedback from them over several months. And so we had, at least within this small core group of people, we had shown them, yes, we have a product. Yes, it works. Yes, we are taking your feedback. We are making changes, putting out updates. And I think a lot of that went to giving us this positive buzz that allowed the Kickstarter to do so well. And basically the second time through, we got almost 450K, which was a huge increase over the initial one, and also pretty surprising, but a very happy surprise. We made a lot, and there's a lot of potential for the game. I'm really excited because that second Kickstarter is being fulfilled basically starting 1 or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
It's coming in. It's going to be in retail pretty soon, and retail is really, Kickstarter is selling an idea, but retail is more selling a game. Because once it's in retail, people have actually played it. They've actually seen what the quality is, what the components look like, what the mechanics are, and they're going to be telling other people about how the game plays. Whereas when it's on Kickstarter, you're kind of telling people about what they think. You're selling this idea, this hope, this vision of what the game will be.
Yeah.
And I think they're two pretty different things. So far, Aeon's End has done pretty well at both, and I hope that continues.
Yeah. For sure. What was the target on the second one where you hit the 450?
I mean, it was again like, if we don't make 30, we're not going to make the game. But so the thing with Kickstarter is, part of what you do is, this might sound kind of scummy, but it's like manipulate expectations.
Okay.
Like, it's more exciting to crush a small goal than it is to like just barely meet a big goal.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So like, I think in general you have a better positive atmosphere if like the goal is 10 or 20,000, but really like if you didn't make at least 60 or 70 or 80, you'd be pretty disappointed. But you keep it low, so it's like, wow, yeah, we crushed we already made our goal. We can make the game on the first day, and everyone's like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's like a little funny like that, because like the goal was 30, but we knew we were going to make way more than 30. So before the Kickstarter even started, we had all these stretch goals planned out, and we were deciding like, how, the question with the second Kickstarter wasn't, are we going to make the game? It's how many stretch goals can we put into it?
Right.
And that was very funding dependent. If we don't reach a certain amount, then like we just, it doesn't make economic sense to add some of the stuff that we wanted to add.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, though, because my parallel to that was in the Dota space. It used to be all about stretch goals when Valve was putting compendiums into the game that were attached to third-party tournaments. So if you and I came together and said, we're going to run a tournament for $100,000, Valve, we have these cosmetics, let's put them in the game. They'll give you a revenue share that can go into your pocket. Some of it goes towards the prize pool. And you can use that money as you set up stretch goals to get more sales. And it's that same sort of a thing of projecting what you think you might get and setting stretch goals that are realistic, knowing that you might go over it and might have to have even more extreme stretch goals. It's a weird kind of house of cards where you don't want to reveal all of them too early. And like you said, you want to present some level of, we did it, gang, to keep them going. So it's a complicated thing. It maybe sounds a little scummy, but I don't think it is. It's just the nature of crowdfunding's an interesting beast. It's just a different animal altogether.
Yeah, especially in the tabletop space, because it's, I think when Kickstarter is done right for tabletop gaming, it's basically used as a pre-order service rather than as a let's build a game together.
Yep.
Because the tabletop, if you're thinking of, so let's say you make a digital game. You don't have to worry about distribution, you don't have to worry about how many copies to make, you just want it to, basically distribution is like localize it for other languages and comply with local laws. But with the tabletop game, you have a very challenging question of how many copies do we print? because it's incredibly expensive to do anything other than a large bulk order. So you can't afford to do something like, well, if we need more copies, we'll just print another 200 copies. Like, it doesn't work like that, because everything's being printed in China and brought over on giant boats. So the more copies you can print at a time, the larger the cut is that you can get. And at below a certain threshold, it just doesn't make economic sense to make copies. Like, we would never print 200 copies of Aeon's End and ship them over on a boat, because we'd probably end up losing money. I don't deal with distribution and manufacturing part of the process, but based on talks I've had and things that I've heard, like, that's a major challenge in tabletop games. And so Kickstarter is really great for that, because we can basically say, okay, there are 3,000-ish people who have already bought the game. That's great for us. And then we can use that to extrapolate, like, well, okay, how many more copies do we think we can sell? And that puts us in the right ballpark, so we don't print too few, and then the demand greatly outstrips the supply, and we don't print, an extra 10,000 copies that we're just sitting on because nobody wants them.
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely makes sense. I have been working in the digital space for a while, and you have to source all these different pieces and have it boxed specifically, and it's also different with quality control, because that product is the end product. There's no patching. There's no do-overs. It has to be that final, completely done. This is the polished product, and that's just a whole nother set of parameters getting it to that point.
Yeah, and that's another, like, I think as a longtime video game player, especially on PC, consoles used to be like that. You bought a game and that was it. There were no patches, there were no updates. But for anybody who's been playing PC games for a long time, and more recently console games, you expect patches.
Yeah.
And it's almost to the point where you expect the game to be kind of broken for the first week. It's like a lot of companies release a game and it's like, oh yeah, this is the day 1 patch, the day 3 patch, the day 20 patch. Like, okay, now the game actually works. Now you can actually finish it, which is very weird, because in a tabletop space, you're talking about, like, you hit a button, and that's it. There's no more changes for a long time. We sold out the first print run, so we got to do a second edition and another print run off that, and we made some tweaks and updated some wording in the second edition. But besides that, like, there's no redos, there's no go backs, and even on the second edition, we've already seen a few mistakes that we made, and there's just nothing we can do.
Yeah, it's over.
It's too late.
Got to deal with it. Right. Yeah, well, that is definitely sort of a unique hurdle, I guess, when it comes to the modern day gaming. I want to ask you a little bit about the lifestyle change. Like, we talk about pro gamers a lot on this podcast, mostly pro Dota players, but what that lifestyle entails, and the travel, and just the demand for perfection. It's a very stressful lifestyle, high kind of volatile, I guess is a good word for it.
Yeah, for sure.
How is it transitioning into what I can only imagine is a more stable lifestyle? Probably a more guaranteed salary. Is some of you kind of addicted to that adrenaline? Do you miss being on the stage, hearing the fans go crazy, those, sick backdoor plays and all that kind of stuff? Is it hard sitting in the office just thinking about tabletop mechanics?
I like what I do. I like designing games. I find it very intrinsically enjoyable, and I have a lot of outward motivation because the game is doing well. I've gotten to a point where it's not just something I'm doing for fun. It's not this great hobby that I want to spend all my time on, but because the game is doing well, I still enjoy doing it. I'm getting close to a point where, like, if Aeon's End had tanked, I would probably move on to something else. As far as the change in lifestyle, I don't know. I mean, tabletop games design is probably less consistent. At least when I was a pro gamer, I had a monthly salary. Right now, I'm just on commission.
Oh, okay.
So basically, when the game does well, I get paid, and if the game doesn't do well, I don't make money. Whereas at least for a long time as a pro gamer, I was getting a salary from Complexity every month, and it wasn't much, but I wasn't spending much money, right? I just sit in my house and play computer games all day. Like, I didn't have a lot of expenses, so it was no big deal.
Interesting.
I thought about trying to be a pro gamer again a few times, a lot of times. I don't know. It crosses my mind pretty frequently, but it doesn't feel like Starcraft is the place to be. You know, the scene's been downsized time and time again.
Yeah.
When I talk to some of the other pro gamers, they feel like they're like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem worth it because the game is so hard. It takes so much effort to even just be competitive at a tournament, and then you only are really getting money if you're, you know, top few at the tournament. A lot of the teams don't have sponsorships in that scene anymore, and going to another game seems tough. I actually tried Heroes of the Storm.
Okay.
So I played around sometime after I retired. I basically played Heroes of the Storm on a team for a few months, and it was fine. But I liked designing Aeon's End more, and I had to choose between the two, so I chose Aeon's End.
Yeah, I mean,
and
that game seemed like it had some competitive flaws. I won't lie. Of all the ones to put your cards into, as this is going to be my next competitive future, it's like I don't know. The skill cap compared to Starcraft, I think, is just not even comparable. You know, it's a completely different world.
Sure, but it was a brand new Blizzard game in a space that is very popular. MOBAs have shown to be a popular genre, and the game was young enough that if it did take off, I was in on the ground floor.
That's true. That's a fair point.
You know, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, Heroes of the Storm, it didn't have much potential. Yeah, it's easy to say that now, but, you know, I assessed the situation. It seemed reasonable to me, so I gave it a try, and it ended up not working out. And then I tried playing Overwatch for a few months, and I was like, all right, I'm going to get really good at Overwatch. I'm going to see what happens. And turns out that I hate people. That's just it. I'm done with team games. I cannot stand
So Dota's out for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Dota's out, League is out. Anything with a team, I am just done with it. I'm so salty about just the general player that you get on the ladder, and it feels like it gets worse the higher up you get.
Yep.
So I'm not a super social person. I have a lot of trouble like playing with a consistent team. I don't really a lot of the time when I play games, I just want to play by myself. I find playing with a team and always be on voice cams, it can be kind of exhausting for me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty introverted. And so I did a lot of solo queue in Overwatch. And it was like, yeah, sure. There's enough people. It's not a big deal. And sometimes I duo queue. And I would just have these days where it was like, first game of the day, guy plays Symmetra on offense. And then we ask him, hey, please don't play Symmetra. Play like, at least try. At least let's try to win. And then he just gets mad and starts feeding. And then he plays Torbjorn and builds turrets in their base and just lets them kill him over and over. I'm like, I don't understand. Why is this happening to me? And then the next game, I get someone else, and it's just like, hey, is it okay if I play Reinhardt? Like, I don't really play DPS. And he's like, no. I have to play Reinhardt. And I was like, okay. So I play someone else. And they're like, why are you so bad? It's like, well, I don't play DPS. Like, I told you that. I don't understand why we can't come to an agreement. And the guy starts feeding. And it was like, I had one day where it was like 1 or 2 games, you know, like on average, I probably have 1 or 2 games per session where like someone would just feed and be super trolly. And fine, like that happens. And then I had one day where it was like literally over a 2-hour period, I think I played 10 minutes of actual Overwatch. Because it was just babysitting and dealing with feeders and trolls. And I was just like, I'm so done with this experience. I hate it so much. And I'm not the type of person that wants to play like a 6-stack all the time, because I think I would have a lot of fun if I did that, but it's too much for me as a introvert.
Well, that is definitely tough. I see why you were attracted to Starcraft and why you were a Starcraft pro player. It definitely makes sense. It fits your mind. Yeah. You like the mechanics, the difficulty, the strategy, but it's all you. You know, it's all solo, and it's just a much different mindset when you're relying on your own reaction. And even Dota, if you practice the game and you're playing with pro level players or whatever, players on your skill level, it's still hard. It takes a lot of coordination, and it's just a much different gaming experience. There are a number of Dota pros that feel the same way that you do, except their problem is they love Dota. They're not social people. They're very introverted. They have trouble expressing themselves on teams. They've been passed around because they have trouble really expressing themselves and contributing to the team environment. And some careers have been ruined over it. It's a objectively tough game to not really want to live in a team house and bond and have some level of that, we're a team, you know, that morale thing. And some people that just doesn't resonate with. So you're lucky that you chose that StarCraft path, because it seems very aligned with your personality.
It was a strategic choice.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I told you in college I decided to play Brood War. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I threw a dart at a board. I was like, oh yeah, I think it'd be really good if I spent all my time playing Starcraft 1. That seems like a nice random choice. It was I thought about all the games that I had played and enjoyed, and I decided not to play Dota specifically, and I decided not to play Counter-Strike specifically because I knew team games they're fine, but they're not something I want to spend all my time playing, especially because I was at school and I knew I'd be super busy and my schedule was weird. And it's just so much easier to say, yeah, I'll just log on. I'll play some StarCraft by myself. That's fine. That's no problem. Versus like you play Dota, you need a team. You need to have people you play with if you really want to get good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And while we're just on the topic of games, I'm curious about your thoughts of the StarCraft expansions and just the direction they've taken the game. I mean, I mostly was casting and paying attention during Wings of Liberty and just sort of was just passively watching from the side once the other expansions came out. Did the way they took the game from like a design and balance aspect, did that motivate your interest or disinterest in the game?
Actually, Legacy of the Void is the best that StarCraft has ever been.
Really? Okay.
And I wish it had come earlier. I wish my interest hadn't died right around when it had come out, because I enjoyed playing Legacy of the Void more than I have ever enjoyed playing StarCraft.
What is it about it? Like, what are the mechanics, or what is it that makes it so much better than like Wings of Liberty, for example?
So one thing is the maps make sense. There's no Steps of War. There's no Metalopolis. There's no Scrap Station.
Oh my god!
Right? There's no maps where the rush distance is 10 seconds, and you build barracks in your main. You basically already proxied them. So the maps are more consistent, and that's been improving since Heart of the Swarm.
Okay.
The new units are nice. They add a little more variety to the game, but really the big change is that the bases mine out faster. And the second, like, kind of auxiliary change is you start with more workers.
Okay.
Starting with more workers eliminates a little bit of like rock, paper, scissors nonsense at the start of the game, which I'm fine with. I never found it to be particularly interesting. I know there are some people who are like, you can't six fool anymore. The game sucks now. I'm like, those people are dumb. I think that's a terrible opinion. The fun part of StarCraft is not whether or not you decide to six fool someone and if they predict you correctly. It's all of the stuff that happens after that. So you start with more workers and you get to the fun part of the game quicker. And the fact that the bases mine out faster, and so like basically half of the patches have half the minerals. So your bases become less efficient more quickly, but you're not incentivized to abandon them altogether. You still want to maintain control of that base. And so it spreads the action out a lot more. And it's basically removed a lot of the like, what's your strategy? Like, I turtle until I get 200, and then I A-move with Broodlord and Fester. Like, that just disappeared.
Okay.
Because part of it was balance changes, and part of it was this new economy, where if you sit on 3 bases, I go up to 4 or 5 bases, and I just have so much more money, and my economy is so much better that I can overwhelm you for playing too passively.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It really resonates with how I prefer to play the game. But I was doing terrible and I hated myself, so I retired.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a very eloquent way to put it, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Where there was the death ball was kind of the overused word, I suppose, during those early StarCraft 2 days. Where there's a lot of that, big timing. It overwhelms you. Okay, the game's over when you're on 2 base. Very very formulaic, I guess, in a way. Cool.
Yeah, and there's still like 1A type of things, but it's a more interactive 1A.
Yeah.
It's like we have a battle and then we replenish and we have a battle and now you've got to take an expansion, and if you don't, the game just ends. That's cool. The games don't drag out forever anymore, or in the same way that they used to.
Yeah.
They're also doing a lot of stuff, like they have the Allied Commander mode, which supports the more casual cooperative focused players, which is really good. They added more skins and microtransactions, so there's a more constant revenue stream for the game, so they can pay the developers to do more content. Like, just everything about StarCraft now is so much better than it used to be. It just, came too late.
Yeah.
I think is the main thing, which is
It's
sad.
it's a shame. It really is because I remember like some of those really early like the Idra versus Huck kind of rivalries and stuff, and just the electricity at those early MLGs, all the seats filled, the periphery of people, that arc just kind of surrounding the chairs. And it's just not really the case for StarCraft anymore. And I've spent a lot of time kind of wondering what is it about StarCraft that didn't allow it to scale the same way that Counter-Strike and Dota and League of Legends really have in the last couple of years. Part of me thinks it's because the skill cap doesn't translate as well from a watchability standpoint. You can see, like in Dota or League, those combinations. You're focusing on 5 specific units. And in StarCraft, the player doing 200 actions per minute going absolutely crazy in a booth, it doesn't really look that different on the screen. It's just one army sort of overtaking another army a lot of the time. What do you think? I'm curious if you share any of that assessment, or if you have a different theory as to why it didn't scale the same way.
Yeah, well, if there's anything I like talking about, it's theories about why things work. I think it's the mind, the part of my mind that's always been kind of design focused. So to me, it's always been 2 things. One is StarCraft has up until recently, StarCraft has not been good to support a casual player base. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the big thing. The skill floor of StarCraft is much higher, much lower than any other game of the ones we mentioned. It's very hard to just do anything at all in StarCraft compared to League of Legends or Dota or Counter-Strike.
Right. You're focused on one unit in those games. You can go and you can be bad at Dota, but you're still kind of controlling that one unit. You know who you are. StarCraft, if you don't know anything, it's completely overwhelming once you have more than one building or something.
Yeah, I mean, you start and all you have are workers. There are what appears to be infinite options, and you really have no intuition on what you're supposed to do. At least in a game like, so take Counter-Strike. What do you do in Counter-Strike? You kill the other team.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? You get a gun and you shoot them. That's it. It's great. It's so simple. It's so straightforward. It's so easy to pick up and understand intuitively what the game is about.
Yeah.
And in StarCraft, it's like, okay, my objective is to kill the other player, but like, how do I do that? None of the units I start with do that. And I have all these different options of things I can do. I have so many choices, and the game doesn't really direct you in any like intrinsic way. Obviously, if you play the campaign and stuff, you kind of have a basic intuition, but once you get into multiplayer, it's like, how do you play this game?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big barrier. Another barrier is the fact that StarCraft is best played 1v1, and most people are social. Most people want to play on a team. They want to have something that they can do. It's Friday night, let's drink and play League of Legends. Or it's Saturday morning and I'm still hungover, let's play some Dota now.
That's true.
And you can do it because the games allow you to play them with less input from you. And since you're playing with your friends, even if the game doesn't go that well, like, it's no big deal because it was a social thing. Like, it's still fun. StarCraft's not very fun if you're not playing well in 1v1. It's really just frustrating.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, most games are more fun when you're winning, but StarCraft is, when you're losing, it's just constant pressure. It's just constant sense of urgency. Oh, God, putting out fire here, putting out fire there. It's just a stressful experience to end up losing MMR or matchmaking points or whatever it is. So, yeah. You're absolutely right.
And kind of the last thing, and this is probably not as important as the other ones, but definitely relevant, is StarCraft was, of all the games we've talked about, the last one to add any kind of persistent microtransaction.
Yeah.
And it might not seem that important, but I'm not in the game dev side of things, but it's not hard to imagine when a company looks at a game and they say, okay, well, it's not making money, so let's not have very many people work on it, versus, hey, it's making tons of money. Let's have more people work on it to make more money.
Yeah.
And so StarCraft didn't see the kind of support that League of Legends or Dota saw, especially in such a short period of time. You know, StarCraft has changed a lot, and that's largely due to Blizzard being a really cool company and supporting, like, Blizzard's still supporting Diablo 3, and yeah, they just released the Necromancer, which was a paid expansion, but like Diablo 3 was a train wreck when it came out. It disappointed a lot of people, and for no real benefit to them besides company image and eventually maybe getting other people to buy the game, like they fixed Diablo 3, and they did that with StarCraft, but if Starcraft was bringing in microtransaction revenue the whole time in Wings of Liberty, it would have seen way more development and way more changes much faster. And I think some of these other games just outpaced it.
Yeah. I always wonder how much of Dota being able to break through in the way that it did had to do with the first international and Valve putting down $1 million. When that announcement came out, I was actually in Anaheim waiting to take a flight back home after an event, and I was sitting there with Destiny, Huck, and Kennegat from Team Liquid, now works in ESL, right? And Huck was just saying, is this a joke or is this real? Oh my God, it's on the Valve website. I'm playing the wrong game. Do you guys want to start a Dota team right now? You know, like there was a Chinese team that literally didn't play because they thought it was a joke. They thought it was too ridiculous to be real that somebody would put down $1 million for first place. I mean, do you think if Starcraft had that, it would have? I mean, it definitely would have changed the course of time.
Sure.
But, I mean, you know, all the things you just brought up. Is Dota really that different, or was it that giant cash infusion that really ignited the whole thing?
I mean, the story around that definitely helps a lot, but I don't know. It's a very hypothetical situation. Yeah, what would happen if StarCraft had been given a $1 million down payment on a tournament? I'm not sure. Definitely, there would have been a lot of buzz, a lot of hype. But part of the question, though, is where does that money come from?
Yeah.
Because of Dota's microtransaction model, they throw down $1 million for this tournament and they make it back.
Well, it was really, at the time, it was just because of Steam. That was Valve's way of saying, hey, here's all these people that were in the Blizzard universe. If they play Dota, it's because they were playing Warcraft 3. A lot of them don't have Steam. I was one of them. I downloaded and installed Steam the day I installed Dota 2. There were a lot of people that fell into that category, and that was how they justified that massive spend because it's such a huge amount of potential profit of bringing people onto their platform and buying future games through their distribution.
Sure.
That's very unique to Valve, right? Very, very few other publishers can look at that at the time that they did and say, yeah, we can justify this $1.5 million spend. No problem. 3 years from now, we'll be making it back and then some. So that's definitely true. I guess maybe a more pointed and better question is, did StarCraft suffer from lack of money? Maybe $1 million is too much, but were the prize pools just too low to cultivate that, you know, upbringing of new talent and people into the game to make a full-time living?
I don't think having bigger prize pools in StarCraft would have fixed. It wouldn't have been a long-term solution.
Okay.
Because and it comes back to some of the other things we already talked about, which is like the game didn't have microtransactions, so it wasn't bringing in. It wasn't like the more people that play StarCraft, the more money it brings in, which is true for Dota. It's true for League of Legends. It's true for Counter-Strike. You know, just from a probability standpoint, some of the people that play this game will spend money on microtransactions, and that brings revenue. So the more people you have playing, the more money you make.
Yeah.
And StarCraft wasn't like that, and I don't know. I always felt like if StarCraft had a nicer casual experience, that would have helped a lot more in retaining players. StarCraft is weird because it's one of the games, I would guess, based on things I've seen and polls in the past, like I don't know concretely, but StarCraft probably has the highest ratio of people who don't play the game actively or maybe ever to people who watch the game.
Yeah, I think that could be fair. Maybe Counter-Strike has it beat now with some of the big numbers they've put up, and since they're on TV, there's a lot of people watching it that have not really necessarily played it that much, but
sure.
I understand your point. StarCraft is definitely one of those games that you don't have to be actively playing it if you have played it at some point in the past to be able to watch it and, you know, keep up with it, and that's where a lot of the fan base is now. I mean, what about that genre as a whole? Do you have any hope for Warcraft 4 being the savior for RTS? Is Blizzard even working on a Warcraft 4? I don't know. I'd love to play it, though.
I think the next RTS that really does well is going to change what we think of as RTS.
Okay, interesting.
I think the genre as we know it right now has too many fundamental problems that need to be resolved for it to be able to compete with something like Dota or League of Legends or Counter-Strike.
Okay. I guess I don't really disagree with that. hoping that whatever game Day 9 was working on might be the game to do that, but I guess that's no longer in the works. I guess I can only imagine since he was at the International, he's not a full-time game developer anymore.
Yeah, well, he announced that he left the project about a year ago.
Okay.
Which is what he left the project, and a few weeks later it shut down.
Ah, I see. All right.
I actually played in that.
Really?
A number of times. Yeah, he hosted pro tournaments.
Oh, okay. I'm out of the loop then. I've been living in my own Dota bubble for too long.
Well, it was like a secret thing.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, it was like you're not allowed to tell anyone about the games. You're not allowed to tell them about the gameplay. You're not allowed to stream it or anything. And I think I won 1 or 2 of them. I don't remember. I do really well at games that people don't understand. Okay. So, like, I love jumping into these, like, really weird mods or things that people are doing. There's actually another one that I've been playing in, being made by a former Starcraft pro gamer.
Oh, okay.
And for whatever reason, I just have a lot of success picking up stuff that people don't understand, like figuring things out faster than they do.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if that genre finds some sort of big-time revival. I know a lot of folks have been talking about like the arena shooters coming back, I guess with Quake, the newer Quake game coming out, and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not really into FPS. I mean, I have been playing a lot of PUBG recently. I can watch Counter-Strike now. Like I've played enough of it that I know what's going on.
Is PUBG even really FPS?
Well, I don't know, but it's the most FPS game that I've played more than 10 hours of, you know?
Sure.
But no, I guess it's more of a hide and wait game if you had to put a genre on it.
To me, saying PUBG is FPS is almost like saying is Dota an RTS.
Yeah, that's
like
fair. So what genre is it though? What is the proper? Is a survival game? Is that the category?
I almost think like Battle Royale is its own genre at this
Okay.
point, because the emphasis is on like terrain, hiding, scavenging supplies, and then like you also kill people.
Yeah. It is true. It does sort of feel like killing, I guess, is somewhat secondary. I haven't played that many of the Battle Royale games outside of it. You know, I've watched streams of DayZ and H1Z1, and I've seen some of the Rust clips. But I guess Fortnite is the other new one that people have been talking about that is somewhat survival-y.
Also, Fortnite, like, just added a Battle Royale mode. Like, it...
Yeah.
So I haven't played Fortnite, but I followed some of the stuff. So it's like you build a base and you like defend it against monsters or something, and then there was just this announcement that they're like, "Hey, yeah, we're also adding Battle Royale because it's really popular."
Yeah. I think PUBG posted something. They're not so happy about that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they expect. It seems like pretty dumb to be mad at people for copying you for being literally the most successful game on Steam ever.
Yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, we came up with it. Like, how dare you copy us?" It's like, really? Are you serious? Like, almost every game has been, you know, not like copied, but like strong elements of games have been taken forever. That's just how games are made. That's how pretty much everything is done. You take a little bit, and then you do some of your own stuff, and you end up with something new and cool.
I mean, think about smartphones, right? iPhone comes out, the idea of a full touch screen, all of a sudden, all of these other off-brands are doing touch screens that are roughly the same shape, same general size, same camera placement as the iPhone. You know, it's not rocket science. It becomes, once something catches on, it creates that kind of tipping point where other people want to get in on something that the populace finds successful. So I'm with you. I think it kind of makes sense for others to follow in the footsteps and want to get in on this genre now that it's proven to be hot. It's the big thing right now.
Yeah. Maybe I should make a Battle Royale board game. I wonder if those exist.
That could be cool. I don't know how it would work, but it sounds
cash
interesting.
in. Don't worry. It's up here.
Something to keep an eye out for. So if we can circle back a little bit, though, to your specific experiences with tabletop, I guess I'm just curious about the nature of how publishers work in that space and the level of necessity. Like, did you ever have the option to not work with a publisher? Is it stupid to not work with a publisher? Have you had good, mixed, bad experiences? I guess I just don't really understand how that whole process begins.
So for me, I don't like the stuff that the publisher has to do. I don't want to be in charge of manufacturing. I don't want to be in charge of distribution. I don't want to have to deal with customers emailing me back and forth about problems they have because of shipping issues or damaged product or whatever. And so I could have tried to go self-publish, but it was never a thing I was interested in. It's like, it basically, to me, if I wanted to self-publish a game and do all these things that I don't want to do, I might as well just get a job. Right? Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing board games at that point if I'm going to do all... The reason I do game design and the reason I'm okay with it is because I get to do mostly the stuff that I enjoy more than anything else. There's,
Right.
there's... Every job has things you don't like about it. I have to do proofing cards and writing rule books and stuff, and I don't enjoy that much. But the majority of what I do in my job is really cool game design. How do we make this more balanced? How do we make this more fun? How do we make it more approachable? And to say like, hey, why don't you self-publish? To me, that's like, hey, why don't I just work at Subway or like,
Okay.
go do something else? So I think if somebody is interested in taking that route, they could try it, but it's so much easier when you don't have to figure that stuff out. Like, I had enough work on my hands trying to figure out how to design a game, much less like, how do I get it produced in China? How do I get it back to the States? How do I distribute it? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense. And I'm sure you can't reveal specifically, but what is the general give that you have to, like, what is the sacrifice that you have to make to work with a publisher? Is it equity in the company? Do they just get a cut of every game that's sold or produced? Or like, is there, I guess the broader question is, if you were to go the route of doing it yourself, is there some kind of long-term payday where 3 years down the road, you still own all of it, and you're like the South Park guys, you're 20 seasons in and you still own 100% of the IP?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that would be great. And it's more like they give me a cut of, like, I get a relatively small percentage of each game that's sold.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, of course, if you self-produce and you do it right, you make much more money and you have more artistic control and things like that. It's what are the sacrifices when you have to work with other people? Sometimes you have to compromise. Sometimes you don't get to make the decision on everything. I have a pretty strict rule of I work on the game. There's one guy at the publisher who works on it very actively with me, and then my girlfriend also works on it quite a lot. And I try to use a strict rule of if they both disagree with me on something, then I just concede the point because I trust their judgment well enough. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to fight one of them, but if they're both like, hey, independently, we don't agree with this, we should do it this way, then I'm like, all right, that's fine, let's just do it. And so a big part of the design process when you work with other people is just compromise.
Yeah.
And making sure that everybody is okay with the direction the game is going.
Yeah, that's interesting. We have a similar, MOONDUCK has a lot of owners, and we have a similar sort of, if it's ever 4-1 or 5-1, almost always that one will just say, you know what, I must be missing something here. I'm kind of outvoted, and it ends up being a unanimous thing. But it's interesting to hear others sharing that kind of experience, the sort of, I don't know, pure democracy or whatever the hipster trend to put on it is. But
I mean, the main thing is, like, no one is infallible.
Yeah.
I know that I am wrong a lot. And I also know that I have biases against my own ideas. I love my own ideas. And so, like, even if I don't agree with them at the moment, I have enough faith in them as designers and in their judgment that, like, yeah, they're probably right. And I'm okay to, just accept everybody's fallible. I'm probably at fault here. And if it's really a problem, it usually comes up again and we can have the discussion in the future.
That's awesome, man. It sounds like a very well thought out workflow. It sounds like a positive experience. I mean, the last topic I want to talk about is just what does the future hold? It's just, I mean, it's insane that you guys have been able to raise so much. I mean, $400,000 plus on Kickstarter is a serious accomplishment, man. I mean, that's really, like, that's the kind of thing. And I see what you mean, how if it tanked, maybe I would move on to something else, but the opposite is it's equal but opposite. When it goes that extreme, I can only imagine the motivation of, let's see how far we can take this thing. Let's make this game as good as it can be. Look at this awesome foundation we have. What's the next step? I'm curious if you even know what the next step is at this point.
Yeah, so we're 3-ish months into development on the sequel.
Okay.
So you played Pandemic Legacy?
Yep.
So we're working on something that is Aeon's End campaign / legacy, sort of.
Okay, so something that it has a little more replayability that goes on over a perceived time period or something.
Yeah, so replayability is not the right word, because replayability it implies that you can play the same experience multiple times, whereas Pandemic Legacy is definitively not that way.
Yeah.
It's more like that campaign experience where you finish the first game and it gives you some story and it ties directly into the next game, and you play that game and it ties into the next one. You keep going until you get to the end and there's this overarching story, and decisions that you've made in previous games come back to either haunt you or help you.
Yeah.
And so there's this persistence to the play experience. That's what we're working on.
No, you're right. I'm glad you drew that distinction, because replayability truly isn't the word. Once you're done with Pandemic Legacy, it's done. It's truly you can't even use it again. It's just a trophy. So
right.
But you're right. It has that comeback kind of mechanic that builds the storyline and weaves it all together. It's pretty cool. Well, that sounds pretty exciting. We might need to investigate once that comes out, man. That sounds right up our alley. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Congratulations once again. I think I'm kind of out of notes here. Anything else that you want to bring up or tackle that we haven't gone over already?
No, that's pretty good. For being an introvert, it's surprising how much I like to just talk. Yeah. I think I cover.
It's easy to talk about stuff you're passionate about, you know?
Yeah, you do like to talk a lot. That's funny.
It's cool, though. I mean, I definitely, I'm in a similar boat as you. You know, I've had other quote-unquote real jobs that I've quit to be able to do esports stuff. So it's, very much we work a lot of hours, but it's because part of it is fun and we enjoy it. So some of it doesn't always feel like work. And it's awesome just to see other people in the space that are able to, have a vision and then realize it into a real product. I mean, that's already an achievement. So I'm excited to see what the future holds, man. It's really cool.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Absolutely. So where's the best place for people to pick this up? If they've listened to this and they're swayed to give it a try, where can they find copies of Aeon's End?
Probably Amazon is the easiest place. You could also go to your local game store if you live near one. And just ask them if they have it. If they don't have it, almost any game store will order it. Will be able to order a copy for you.
Okay, cool. So you guys, Amazon's nice and easy. Now that Twitch and Amazon are one, we've got a lot of Prime users out there. So those Amazon plugs are good. Well done. All right, and of course, if you guys want to follow him on Twitter, I think it's SC2_QXC. Still giving some love to the Starcraft 2 days there on the social media. I love it.
It's unfortunate that everything has a. If I had known that so many websites would have a required character limit for your username, I would not have chosen QXC.
Yeah, that's definitely something. I bumped into that with Zyori. 5 characters is not. I think Twitter is minimum 6, so that's where the TV came from. You got to tack something on. It's a tough life out there, man. All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. For those of you that joined us late, this will be up on the Moonduck YouTube per usual, and the audio only will be in the description, hosted on Zyori.tv. Next one of these, Trent will be back. We'll be talking Dota 2, True Sight, all sorts of other stuff coming up in the space. And I think that's tentatively planned for this weekend, but we'll see. The Dota 2 calendar is absolutely insane right now, so scheduling has been hell in a handbasket. But we're going to cut it. We'll see you guys next time. Again, thanks a lot, Kevin. Hope it keeps going well for you, man. Good luck.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Good luck.
All right.